Hey guys, welcome to another video with Mysteries with Pippa. So I'd just like to start by apologising. Not only are the videos getting uploaded later and later, I appear to look uglier and uglier in them. So the reason why they keep being uploaded later and later at the moment is purely because of me. I've been really ill at the moment. I don't know what's going on with my body. I've been developing loads of spots. My immune system's really shut down. I know at the moment I'm taking over my manager's job as well as my own job. Another girl hasn't been in work. So I've been doing 3 people's jobs. So I think that is the main reason of why I've been really run down. And so even though I'm doing the same amount of research, just the sheer trying to get ready to upload the video is really difficult. But thank you all so much for bearing with me. So today's mysteries is an unsolved mystery of a woman named Ella Philippoff. Emma Philippoff was born in January 1986 and she grew up in Perth, Ontario. She actually lived in a house that her parents had built for themselves, and her mother was a local school teacher and her father was a painter. Now, judging from just her parents, she grew up in a really supportive household, and it was also a household that was really creative, and so this had a massive impact on her personality. She was really creative, she loved painting, photography, she'd write loads of poetry, which I've done an English degree and I've read her poetry and it's amazing. So judging just from purely from her attributes that she's given out to the world, she's a very creative person. She was also described specifically by her father as being very giving and very caring, and almost sometimes this would be a bad thing. In other words, she would be too caring, too nice, and often this would lead to people taking advantage of her. She was also vegan and she didn't believe in technology, so she's never owned a phone, and she only contacted her parents via email when she lived away from them. She was a big believer of cleansing the body, and so she wouldn't drink coffee or sugar. She would really restrict her rations a day. She believed in a really healthy lifestyle and a very simplistic lifestyle. She lived a relatively normal life up until the age of about 17 and 18. That is when her parents decided they were going to get a divorce. This event affected her so much, she felt like she had to get away from her home, and so at the age of 18 she moved out. She first began to teach English in China, and she also gained some qualifications in culinary arts and one in photojournalism. She was someone who was extremely clever, and she was also someone who was very beautiful. Her friends described her as someone who always attracts both amazing people but also creepy people due to her sheer beauty. Then at the age of 25 she moved to Victoria and she landed a seasonal job at a fish and chip shop, and she also lived on a boat for a short period of time. She was also described as always making friends wherever she went, and she was so bubbly, and she would frequently go around to homeless areas and speak to people and try and help them out. Just from what I've heard from her family, from her friends, from strangers that she's met, she seems to be someone of great humbleness, someone who greatly appreciates people, someone who loves nature, loves to camp, and she had an amazing personality, and it really shows through just from the documentaries and also from the pictures that she's taken. When she first moved to Victoria in 2011, she was described by her friends as her personality slightly beginning to change. She was described as being very obsessed. So when she would be with friends, she would eat lunch and she'd have to organise it a specific way. If she was on the beach, she would organise shells in a very specific way. Her shoes were organised very specifically. And if you were with her, you would have to do the same as well, and this really freaked her friends out. So they called her dad and said that she was showing really obsessive personality traits in weird things, and it was something that she'd never done before, so this was really concerning. And so her dad begged her to come home, but she said no, I'm okay where I am, and life just continued. From February to November of 2012 she lived in a women's shelter in Victoria, and she was also described as being very paranoid and very obsessive over certain things, so she would always have to have her curtains closed when she stayed at the women's shelter, and she was very panicky and sketchy when she was out and about. So there are some events leading up to her death which are very poignant that I'd like to just point out. While she was still in Perth, she had found herself somewhat of a bit of a stalker. So a guy, I can't pronounce his name, they pronounce it with a really like French accent, it's like Julien. But I'll just call him Julian for the purpose of this video. So Julian had fallen in love with Emma, and he was really interested in dating her, but she wasn't interested at all, and it's also part of the reasons why she moved at the age of 18. Julian didn't leave it there. He would frequently ring up the house to try and find out where she was. Ringing up many times, it wasn't borderline harassing, it was harassing. And he even sent Emma's father an email, and he admitted in the email that he had been stalking her, that he wasn't going to do it anymore. But we'll come to that a little bit later on. She'd also said to her friends that she was worried about a stalker, but she never mentioned any names. She just said that there was a guy who had been harassing and stalking her, and she was a little bit worried about him. So judging from this, we can assume it is Julian. After she'd moved to Victoria, a couple of months after, who moves to Victoria? Yep, you guessed it, Julian. Julian claims this was a coincidence, but I'll show you the map now, Perth, Ontario to Victoria. It's so far away. On the same piece of land, you can't get any further, and he just so happens to move to Victoria a couple of months before she dies. I don't think so. He bumps into her because apparently he's in the same part of town, and she seems nice and happy. This is what he says in the email, and that's what he emails the dad about and says that he's met up with her. He offered her to go to watch an Irish band, and that he didn't want to stalk her like he did before, that this was purely coincidental. I really don't buy it. Oh, and by the way, after she did went missing, he took a polygraph test, and even though he passed, and the police excluded him from being a suspect after she disappeared purely on that. Leading up to her disappearance, these are the events that happened. On the 20th of November, she goes to the YMCA to start a membership with them. We watched the CCTV footage of her going in to try and get the membership. She goes in and out 6 times within a minute. She's looking out constantly as if someone's there. Her actions and movements are very sketchy. It's someone who's clearly very paranoid and someone who clearly needs help. She lingers in the hallway, she walks out, she comes in, and it's all really, really strange. On the 23rd of November, she calls her mother in the middle of the night. Now, bearing in mind she's not spoken to her mother for a good while, so this call was out of the blue. When her mother answered the phone, she was crying hysterically down the phone, saying that she wanted to come home, and her mum said, like, of course you can come home, there's always a home for you here. From the 23rd to the 28th, Emma and her mother called numerous times to each other, and Emma would frequently change her mind. So one minute she would ring up and say she wants to come home and she misses everyone, she really needs to come home. She wouldn't say why she wanted to come home so bad, and she also wouldn't say why she was crying, but just that she wanted to come home. And then other times she would ring up and she'd be like, no, I'm fine, I can work this out, nothing's wrong, I can do this. Now, on the 20th of November, Emma and her mother had a last phone call before she disappeared, and in this phone call, she actually tells her mum not to come. So she tells her, don't come to pick me up, don't come to Victoria, I'm fine, I can work it out. And she also tells her mother that she can't face her and that she's not sure how to face her mother, which is a really odd statement. I mean, if I was talking to my mum and I said, I can't face you, I don't know how I can face you, that would tell me I either did something wrong or something really bad has happened to me. I can't face you, or I physically look different. Something is really wrong and you're clearly not well, or something has happened to you for you not to feel like you can face your mother. But anyway, Her mum decides to go and doesn't tell her, so she just boards a plane to pick up her daughter. She clearly knows something is wrong. At this time, Emma didn't know her mum was coming, so at 8:30 in the morning, she goes to a 7-Eleven store. Now, for all my UK viewers, it is just an American store. When I first heard it, I had no idea what 7-Eleven was, but Googled it, it's just a store. She goes to the 7-Eleven store and she purchases a prepaid credit card with $200 on it. This I found really odd because in her bank account was over $3,000 and she purchased a prepaid credit card for $200. That was for herself. It wasn't for anyone else that we know of anyway, and it's a bit weird because it's just like transferring money from one side to the other. I don't know. She also returned later on that night and she paid for a phone at the same 11 store that night. What's really weird about this is that, do you remember before saying that she didn't like technology? In the 26 years that she's alive, she'd never owned a mobile phone. Like I said, she used to have a laptop and frequently communicate through email, but even then it wasn't that often. An avid book reader, she used to always go to the library and take out books. She'd go frequently 2 to 3 times a day to the library. She was a big bookworm and not huge on technology. So for her to buy a phone shows that she must have been in danger, or there was a huge need to have communication with someone, which she never felt she needed before. Another thing which is really weird is that she does the same thing what she did at the YMCA. So she purchases the phone and she doesn't go out the store for several minutes. She frequently stares out the window, like cupping her hands to see if she can see anyone outside. To me, it seems like she's being stalked and she's terrified. I would believe that over mental illness, but obviously I have no idea. She has no history of mental illness that anyone knows of. Nothing's been stated that she had any mental health issues. So it really feels like she feels that she's being stalked and she's very, very paranoid. She gets back to the women's shelter then after that at 6 p.m. and she's told by one of the staff workers that her mother is on her way. Now, at the time she had told her mum not to come. She had no idea that her mum was coming, and so she panicked and ran out. That is the theory I'm kind of going with at the moment, and you'll see why in a minute. But her mother actually states that she never told anyone. She didn't tell the staff or her daughter. But when you find out what happens next, I believe that maybe she did tell someone that she was coming over to Victoria, and that had gone back to her daughter Emma. Emma was, even though she was really panicky and really scared and didn't want her mother to come over there, she actually went into a cab and wanted to go to the airport. This is what makes me think that she knew her mother was coming, because even though she was terrified, she still wanted to see her mother. So this is also a really weird thing. When she gets into the taxi, she says she wants to go to the airport, and then she changes her mind and says that she doesn't have enough money for the fare to the airport, which would have been approximately about $60. Now, she had $200 on a prepaid credit card, and she had $3,000 in her bank account, and so she claims that she can't afford the fare, and so she asked to just be driven around the block and back. So she's driven around the block and driven back round, and then she waits in the car. The taxi driver is telling her to get out and to pay, and she gets dead panicky when she hears the taxi's radio go off. She doesn't know what the noise is. She's saying, who's those voices, what do they mean? But then she pays the fare and goes. She's then later spotted by an acquaintance, someone that she's met only once before in Victoria. She's spotted with having no shoes on, just some socks, and she's aimlessly walking around Victoria, looking very dishevelled, almost very out of it. And also to have no shoes on is clearly a worry and a concern. The friend stays with her for about half an hour and they chat, and he tries to get some information out of her, asking her if she's okay, what's going on, and she reassures him she's okay. Then she gets a bit panicky with the questions he asks, and then she wants to go alone. So what he actually does, which I think is an amazing thing, if I was in that position, I'd hope my friend would do this. He ducks into a convenience store and he calls 911 and reports her to the police. and the police come to see her. Now, when he reports to the police, he leaves because she wants to be left alone. He assumes that the police will take her in and do the right thing, so he waits until the police arrive and then he goes. Now, when the police arrive, they spend a further 40 minutes with her, questioning her, asking her if she feels suicidal or homicidal, if she's been diagnosed with anything, how her mental health state is. They give her basically a wellness check. She has no shoes on. She says she's fine, she's just going through some issues at the moment, and that she will return to her friend's house to later that evening and sort herself out. The police hands were tied here, I'm not going to lie. She's saying she's no danger to herself or to anyone else, and even though she looks a little strange with no shoes on, she's not bothering anyone and she means no one no harm, and she wants to be left alone, so the police clearly cannot do anything more, and so they go away. Part of me is also, even though I do agree with the police, I still feel like if someone has mental health issues or if someone is so terrified, they're going to lie. They're going to say they're fine, that there is no issues, that they're just working through some things. So part of me is thinking, I wish that the police had took her in, but all this is absolutely hindsight. Things would be completely different for many situations, including hers. But unfortunately, we just have to go with what we've got. So, her mother arrives to the women's shelter at 11 p.m. and Emma is not there. The last time Emma was seen was at the Empress Hotel, where the police had seen her with no shoes on, and she has not been seen since then. So when she arrives to the shelter at 11 p.m, she gets absolutely no help from the women's shelter. It is due to privacy laws that they couldn't release any statements or anything. Her mum at 12 p.m. reports her missing. When they first report her missing, they assume that she's run away, and then when they look through her things, they find a poem on her laptop that can be seen as a suicidal poem. So the poem, I'm not going to read it out, I'm not very good at reading poetry out, but it's from the point of view of Emma post-death. And she talks about, if you're reading this, I am dead, I will be shadow dancing on your timelines, I will be dancing with the stars, I wish you all the best, love, Em. Says something around about that, it's not word for word. And due to this, the police think that she would have committed suicide. Now, because she was last seen at the Empress Hotel looking over the harbour, scuba divers go down and search the harbour 3 times for her remains. They find absolutely nothing. And an expert later said that if she had committed suicide in the harbour, that her body would have been found, it wouldn't have gone outside the harbour, it would have stayed there, she would have floated to the surface, and she would have been along the coast somewhere and someone would have found her. Another expert later also said that they don't think the poem that she wrote was a suicide note, because there is no pre-planning to it. It was written a year before she went missing, and it just seemed like one of her creative moments. And we all have times of depression and times where we maybe question death, and sometimes even when we don't want to live anymore. The most important thing I think that worked for her is that she wrote it down and she got it out rather than acting upon it. This is one of the reasons why I don't think she committed suicide, because of how well she wrote poems and did paintings, and how well she kind of expressed herself, and how well I think she dealt with any issues she had. She dealt with them for a long time. It seemed like her demons were following her around, but she dealt with them appropriately. A week after her disappearance, her prepaid credit card was used at a convenience store to purchase cigarettes. Now, while she didn't smoke or drink, everyone was elated that it had been used. They thought it was her, that she'd just gone off a bit, and so when they tracked down the card, it turned out a man was using it. This man claimed that he found it by a trail and that he'd used it. What's weird about this man is the phone calls that he would later make to the mother of Emma, Shelley. So he rang Shelley numerous occasions. The first occasion he rang her, he apologised profusely, which is understandable, that he used the card, that he shouldn't be, that he's sorry, that he's talking to even the mum, but that he's just a bit of a mess right now, and that he was really apologetic. Second time he rings, this is where it gets weird. He starts to talk about his life, he starts saying that he's a recovering alcoholic and that also he doesn't think or can't remember where he actually found her prepaid card, where he told the police that he found this prepaid card on the trail. He actually isn't sure because he was that drunk. He also took a lie detector test and passed, and he was also excluded from the investigation as a suspect. This is what really frustrates me, is how much they're so eager to exclude people once they pass a polygraph test. A polygraph test isn't 100%, and also people have known to have beaten a polygraph test. I mean, I know it's hard and it's difficult, but it is doable, and they don't appear to look into that. So there's a guy that's actually stalked her, and then there's a guy that has her prepaid card. Both of them take polygraph tests, pass, and are excluded. And then there is also another weird man in the situation. A man was caught on CCTV going into a clothes store, and in his hand he had a ripped up piece of paper. It turns out the store owner reported him to the police, and he'd actually ripped a poster off the side of a lamp post that was stating that Emma was missing, and then he frustratedly and angrily walks into the clothing store and says that Emma is his girlfriend, that she's alive and well, but that she just wants to be left alone, and then he leaves. The police can still not find him, and they're actually really eager to talk to him just to confirm some things on why he thinks Emma is his girlfriend and where Emma is. And yeah, she's still not found to this day. She's been missing for just over 5 years with not a single trace found. All her clothing and belongings were found in her van, and she's not been seen in Victoria since. This case is so heartbreaking and so frustrating because there are so many outcomes. She could have committed suicide because she was depressed and also had mental health issues. But she was very vulnerable, so she would have been an easy target for someone to pick up, to kidnap to keep her alive, or to kidnap and kill her. Also had motive just to run away and to get from everyone. She was terrified of seeing her mother, so for whatever reason she could have just took flight. And so what is so annoying is just how much is unknown about this case and how little evidence there is. Because it's impossible, no one can just disappear, but it's just so frustrating. I'll also just make this aware, I don't think it is related, but her mother and her brother were charged, I think it was last year or the year before, with possession of drugs, cocaine, and also with money laundering. So I don't think this is related, but it is a bit strange that someone in such a public light would do this. So yes, thank you so much for tuning in again this week, guys. I hope I'll see you again next week. Next week I'm going to do the case of Jean Bonnet. It's going to be huge, so I'm going to do a lot of research of it. I also stay at my boyfriend's once or twice a week, and so we're definitely going to be staying up to eat popcorn and watch some documentaries on that so I can do my research. And I will see you next week for the biggest case I have ever done.